and final speaker is PepsiCo's first ever Chief Design Officer. He joined the company back in 2012 and has led an entirely new approach to innovation. Please welcome to the stage Mauro Porcini. Thank you.
People, this was perfect because I'm going to talk about people in love with people. So even personalization, authenticity, everything ladders up at the end of the day to people. So we are here today, all of us, we are here today because we want to learn, we want to connect, we want to better ourselves, because the world around us is changing, it is moving, and is evolving at the speed of light. And so we have this need, this feeling of being up to speed in everything that's going on all the time. AI, data, the metaverse, and the role of people, of human beings inside this world that is moving, once again, at the speed of light. Recession, a war in our backyard, inflation. There are so many things moving, and we need to figure out how to drive companies inside this mess and build brands and grow those brands and drive innovation and do it in a sustainable way, in time, in a purposeful way as well. It is difficult. It's very difficult. Once again, we live in a world that is being changing at an accelerated speed now for a few years. And there are a variety of different drivers that are impacting our life as business leaders, marketers, I'm a designer, as leaders inside these companies, big and small. First of all, the fact that the way we communicate today, the way we build brands today is very different than the one of 20 years ago. In the past, these brands were talking to people, top down, one direction, imposing a message to them through traditional channels, television first, and then a variety of other channels. Then progressively we started to move to the digital world, but still at the beginning was us, brands, talking to them. And then step by step, the balance started to shift and to change. And more, it was them talking about us amongst themselves. We're not even the actors of the conversation anymore. We started to move from the ability to buy the right to talk to people to the need of earning the right to be talked about. And our products and brands started to compete not anymore just with products and brands in the same industry and category, but with any kind of content and information that is relevant to people. So if I work for PepsiCo, my Pepsi may compete with the latest fashion show of Balenciaga or may compete with the latest song of Beyoncé, because at the end of the day, we're competing for time on these devices, for attention of people, for mind share and love share. So this is what we need to understand, how our brands, our products impact and touch the life of people at 360 degrees beyond the categories we're in. And too many times, instead, we focus so much in those categories. It means also that we cannot focus anymore on the product itself and that's it, but we need to focus on the full experience that people have with our products wherever they are, 24/7. And we need to find ways eventually to reach them where usually, traditionally, we were not reaching them. But we need to do it in a meaningful way, in a relevant way, in a way that is so relevant that they will decide to take the content, to take the experience and share it for us. Generate what we call user-generated content. There is another thing that is changing completely in the world today, and it's the fact that essentially anybody, any of you here today, anybody listening to us right now, any of us today can come up with an idea and get access to funding to realize that idea in a much easier way than 20, 30 years ago. Through platforms like Kickstarter.com, or just through the proliferation of investment funds that are hunting for the next idea, to build the next startup. We live in the age of the startup. For a kid to get out of school today and think, I'm going to create my startup, well, it's pretty normal. Actually, the most of them, they want to do that. They don't want to work in a company, in an established brand. Many of them want to create their company and their established brand of the future. If you were thinking this way 20, 30 years ago, many of us would have taken you for crazy. Today, instead, is okay, and you can make it happen. On top of it, the cost of manufacturing to produce your idea is going down, driven by globalization first and by new technologies. There is also decrease in the scale necessary to start, so you can start with small production thanks to a variety of new technologies. So you can get access to money in an easier way, to produce cost less, and then mostly you can go straight to your end user, to the people you want to serve, to sell them stuff through the digital channels, through the e-commerce channel, and then you can build your ecosystem of communication through social media. I just mentioned all the areas where the big companies of the past and today, they were trying, and they are still trying, to build huge barrier to entry. Barrier to entry made of scale of production, communication, and distribution. Essentially, we know, in my company, I know that I have millions and millions, probably hundreds of millions of people out there right now thinking about how to take down my products, my brands. And what do? Well, it's very simple. They focus on the way my brands interact with people, and they try to understand if there are unmet needs, frustration, opportunities that eventually even those people don't realize yet. Maybe we have constraints in our industry that stop us from doing something different. Because we do something, our competitor does the same, our other competitor does the same, it's the standard of the industry, this is what we do. And then Uber happened, and then Airbnb happened, and they disrupt completely the industry, changing completely the rules of the market. So we know that we have these people out there thinking this, and the big difference between now and 20 years ago is that they can take action on us. They can move on us. So either we let them do it, and sooner or later they will, or we should do it on their behalf. We should try to understand how to improve and better our products and brands and experiences and services to beat them even before they arrive. And how do you do that? Big companies and small. There is just one way, and it's to focus on people, on the human beings, on their needs and their wants and what really drives them. Starting from the way we call them, for instance. You know, in the business world, we call these people consumers, customers. I really don't like the word consumer. First of all, it talks about the fact that you need to consume stuff in a world where we have a major problem, that is the lack of resources. Second, it means that immediately we categorize these people as people we want to sell stuff to. In design school, I study design, we would never call them consumers or customers. They're people, they're human beings. If you started looking at them as people and human beings, what do? The people and human beings are your friends, are your kids, are your parents, are your family members. What do? Well, you try to give them something that they love. You love them, you care, you try to go above and beyond. You try to really do something that is extraordinary. Now, extraordinary in the past was not necessary, because with those barriers to entry, you could afford inefficiency, you could afford a product that was not extraordinary eventually, because maybe it was the standard of the industry. You were doing that, the other firm was doing that, the other firm was doing that, everybody was doing that. Today is not the case anymore. Maybe you have a product that is amazing. You have a brand that is loved by everybody, but is not sustainable enough, or it doesn't have a purpose. That's exactly where competition will arrive. And maybe the small competitor is like, oh, it's irrelevant. I'm a big brand, it's irrelevant. But then it's that one, then another one, then another one. And together they start to make your brands less relevant, less cool, until at a certain point, before you realize, you will become obsolete. And so, this need, this idea of focusing on people is necessary. It's one of the reasons why in certain industries, like my industry in food and beverage, or before PepsiCo was in 3M, in tech, in certain industries, the idea of design thinking started to rise. And design thinking is different than the designers are creative directors, the genius, stylish people that do amazing work on the aesthetic of a piece of packaging or clothing or product. Design thinking is the crossroad between the human being, what we call the desirability of everything we do, the business dimension, the viability of what we do, and then the third dimension is the feasibility, technology, manufacturing, how to make everything possible. This is what designers, by the way, study at school. You study in these three dimensions, and then you prototype around those ideas. So today, in these companies, we need people, not just designers. Designers could be the initiator of that kind of approach. And for sure, we need that kind of breed of designers, the design thinkers, to help companies evolve in the culture. But then we need the marketers, with the people working in R&D, in strategy, in all the different functions to embrace this kind of approach, to understand how to work at the center, at the crossroad of these three dimensions, and how to update yourself all the time in these three dimensions: business, human beings, and the world of technology, manufacturing, and then prototype around this. This is what design thinking is about. Design thinking is also described in a different way: empathy, strategy, and prototyping. Empathy is all about understanding what is relevant to people, and then you understand if that thing that you think is really relevant to people may be relevant to your company. From a business model standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, maybe I work in high-end, premium fashion industry, and I'm not really able to play in other kind of categories. Can I stretch my brand in other categories? Does it make any kind of sense? I serve a specific kind of target audience. Kate was talking about this earlier. Can I stretch it somewhere else? So is understanding culture, is understanding business model, is understanding process. This is what strategy is about. Empathy, is it relevant to people? Strategy, is it relevant to my company? If it's not, well, that's part of the innovation project. Maybe you change the culture of your company, you change the business model of the company, you change also the process of your company, but you need to be aware that your design project, your brand project is also, at that point, a business model project, a culture project, and so on and so forth. And then there is the third pillar, that is prototyping. And the panelists before were talking about this, experimenting. I spent 10 years in a science company, in a science-driven company. And for every scientist out there in the company, everybody knew that to arrive to one scientific innovation, you need to do tons of experiments. I mean, of course, thousands and thousands of experiments to arrive to one innovation. In the business world, we call these experiments mistakes and failures. We need the mistakes and failures / the experiments or prototypes to change the game. And we need those prototypes within the company, but then also out there. We need to try new things. Now, we need to understand how to manage it, in the financial algorithm of the company, how to make sure that the brand can support this kind of perceived eventual failures. And therefore, how you engage the people, your target audience, in a conversation. You're like, yes, I made a mistake. You admit it, with your target audience, I did make a mistake. It's fine. I was trying things. And they will love it. If you're authentic, if you're real, if you are really, purposeful in what you do. Now, I mentioned design thinking. That is not just about designers, it's about the culture of the company, mentioning a variety of different processes. And in fact, when I started in this long journey in corporations, that's how I came in, thinking, okay, now I'm going to introduce these new processes and these new tools and methodologies, and I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make these companies human-centered. That for us, designer is the synonym of design-driven. So here I am, and I start to run few projects, and then hundreds of projects with these methodologies, and some of the projects were doing very well. Some others were failing miserably. And then I was like, wait a second, there is something wrong. Probably I need, to update the methodology. I started to call all kinds of consultants and agencies and read books and go to conferences, and I, tweak the methodology. And again, some were working and some were not. And I started to look at the common theme, what was, everywhere, what was making the difference. And then I arrived to a conclusion that was pretty obvious. Really, really obvious. But nobody ever talks about this. What was really making the difference in all those projects were the people behind the projects. The people. But then we go, we talk about innovation and innovation in products, innovation in branding, and we go to conferences, we read books, we go online, we check blogs, we go to mentors, we go to agencies. Everybody talks about ways of working and tools and methodologies, and they share best practices and, projects that succeed, but they tell us, what they did, but not how. The people behind. I came to the realization very early on, many years ago, that actually I needed to be super, super strategic, data-driven, very pragmatic in the identification of the skills of these innovators. I call them the unicorns. I built a list of skills many years ago in 2008. I published it in a paper in 2010, and I actually published a book that is coming out in a month called The Human Side of Innovation, The Power of People in Love with People. These people, I call them the unicorns. Some of these characteristics are obvious. For instance, they are people able to think big, to dream. And now it seems, of course, if you are an innovator, a leader, you think big. The reality is that we are born with that ability. As children, we fantasize and we think big. And then society tries to stop us, to normalize us. Because society, and therefore also companies, don't like too much people that think too big. They try to change the world. Because it's not stable. You cannot be controlled if you try to change too much. And it's not just when we're children. When we're out of school, we come into these companies, we're like, yes, I'm going to change everything. And then after a few days, after a few weeks, the companies start to contain you more and more and more until you stop dreaming. So the first characteristic is dream. Never stop dreaming. And this dream needs to be naive. And when they push back, realize the fact that if you're dreaming, they will push back. By definition, it's always like this. Keep dreaming. If you're not dreaming, you'll never be able to realize this dream. The problem is that then even the people that are able to dream, well, even that is not enough. If you just dream, I met many dreamers, and you are not able to land things, to execute, to make things happen, then we have a problem. So the first key characteristic of these unicorns is that ability to balance vision, thinking big, with making things happen, and fast. Speed is essential, it's very, very important. Now, if you read about leadership and innovation, these kind of traits are pretty obvious. But then over the years, looking at my teams, and I hired hundreds and hundreds of designers over the years, at the beginning was very intuitive. I was hiring them with certain kind of characteristic just because I loved them. And I had the power to hire the people I wanted. So they were having that kind of characteristics. And then over time, I started to see how they were working, how successful they were, and how other teams in organizations, within my company, in other companies, were not that effective. And so I created a list. There are 24 traits, but some of them are really unexpected. For instance, the power of kindness in innovation and branding, the power of optimism, the power of curiosity. Let's focus on these three very quickly, and then we'll wrap up and we'll close. The power of optimism. Well, if you're trying to change the world, if you're trying to change your company, if you're trying to do something new, every time you try to do something new, you will face roadblocks. If you're not facing any kind of roadblock, it means you're not doing anything new. So if you are a change agent, you need to be optimistic by definition. Also, by the way, because if you think you can change things, it means that you're optimistic already by nature. So optimism is very important, but it's so difficult to be optimistic when you face every single day shut doors, people that don't understand you, people that stop you from doing things. And, partially is a natural talent, you have it inside. But there are techniques to try to be as optimistic as possible. When I face all these roadblocks, I try to step back and put things in perspective. And first of all, remember my dream, my vision, where I want to go. That gives me so much energy. But then also remember where I'm coming from. And everything I did to arrive to where I am today, wherever I am. The fact that everything, even the roadblock in the moment, is an opportunity to learn and to grow. Optimism is key. Curiosity is another very important one. Curiosity is what drives you to connect with people, to get out of your comfort zone. The panelists talked multiple times about this need of getting out of your comfort zone and embracing communication with people eventually that are different from you. Design with marketing, with finance, or any kind of diversity. The more diverse somebody is from me, the more I want to talk to them. Because in that difference of background, there is all the precious gift of knowledge. I can learn so much. And by the way, on top of it, my perspective, combined with the perspective of the other person, create, through dialogue and respect, a third perspective that is the innovation perspective, is the original one. Because we all have biases. They're all driven by our background, by how we grew up, the way we look at life, even if we try to change perspective. So engaging in connections with other people, dialogues with other people, reading books, traveling. Don't travel from one city to the other. I always tell my team, just to move from one business meeting to another business meeting. Get out of the room and explore the city. Get lost, meet people, and observe them. So many times we just walk in these cities and we're blind. We look in the air or eventually at our phones, and we don't look at the way people behave, dress, connect with each other, what they do. And this is so important, not just to get data and information. We talk so much about data. Yes, we're going to have data that technology will give us, but we need to accumulate data in our day, every single day, as an ethnographer, always looking at reality with that curious eye. And then I close, kindness. How many times we have a hiring manager, a CEO, a business leader that is asking, is this person we want to hire kind? They probably don't even ask, is he or she curious and optimistic? But kind, not for sure. Actually, in certain industry, the opposite of kindness is considered a wonderful leadership attribute. You know, we celebrate people that are tough, that are rough. And we celebrate also people that put people against each other. Management theories for years told CEOs of many companies that actually you should put people against each other, because in a Darwinian kind of way you're going to extract as much as possible out of the fight. But this was possible in the past. Today we need to drive everything with full efficiency and productivity. There is no space for redundancy, the lack of efficiency, or lack of kindness. You know, if you have a boss that is very, very tough on you, what are the probability that you're gonna help this person when this person has a blind spot? What are the probability that this person actually is listening to you? Now, a company cannot afford people that have that kind of approach to life and have so many blind spots that are not leveraging the collective know-how of a talented team. We can't have that anymore. It was trendy, it was cool in the past. Today is not, because you need to run in a more productive way. If you go to work and you're surrounded by people that are not nice, unkind, what are the probabilities that you go to work and you stay more than 9 to 5? What are the probabilities that you spend time to have a drink or a meal with a colleague? 0. But if you do instead, in those moments, so in this quality time, you build bonds that then when you have a problem in the project, when there is a difficult moment in your company, that's when those bonds help you solving those problems at the speed of light. So kindness is an amazing driver of productivity. So many times right now with an inflation and recession in front of us, we talk about productivity as cutting costs, eventually even cutting people and running production in a more efficient way. We should talk about all these things, but we should talk also about productivity driven by kindness, because lack of kindness is a hidden driver of inefficiency inside the organization. So I want to close and summarize everything with the subtitle of the book that I wrote, People in Love with People. This is the approach that we should have in everything we do in our companies. The second people are the people we focus on, the idea of human centricity. The first people is the unicorns, is each of you, and is the soft skills that you bring to the company and to work that can change the game. Love is probably the most powerful word that synthesizes everything I just said today. Thank you.